So, the translations are out for My Hero Academia manga chapter 342, and all I can say is that this chapter is just a very quiet and calm chapter, which is very telling because most likely what this chapter entails is that the next chapters, the war will be beginning. But before that, let's just talk about this chapter. But first, right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Drew, and I'm here to do my review of My Hero Academia manga chapter 342 titled The Calm Before the Storm. And from what we get in this chapter, yeah, it's pretty much what the title entails. This is a calm, quiet, very simple chapter of My Hero Academia where we're just following the lives of the students, see what they're doing, and see how eventually this is going to lead to the final war or the second war beginning. So there's a fair amount to talk about, just a lot of cute moments in this chapter, and we're going to get right into it, but there's a few things I want to talk about prior. For starters, the naming convention of this title is different. We don't get anything of the story of how we became the great heroes part 1 or part 2, which means that that's actually not going to most likely be a running title, which I'm actually fine with it. I wouldn't want like the same continuous title for each and every part. So judging by this, we're probably going to get that title pop up every so often, but we're still going to be retaining the very conventional naming scheme of My Hero Academia, having very unique names for each chapter for the most part. So yeah, with that, let's dive right into this review where we get the first page of this chapter where we actually get a reveal and a callback involving All For One. Because we're actually in the UA living quarters where all of the civilians, the refugees, they're all located, where it's revealed to us that, that statement about All For One, how he has friends to spare. Yeah, we see that that's the case because we got to see 5 people who apparently are traitors or spies for All For One. And then you have this one guy who we're assuming is the main leader of this small group within inside UA. He has a coconut head haircut, and I'm not talking about an actual coconut, I'm talking about coconut head over here. So yeah, this guy is talking about how he got more orders from All For One and how All For One is telling them to stir up trouble, cause the people who still don't trust the heroes to become more upset, and by doing so, have Deku leave UA by fanning those flames so that Deku can no longer be there. So yeah, this pretty much confirms that what All For One said is true and that he still has friends inside of UA that can allow him to gain the information and to enact his plans, even if it's not through Aoyama, which shows that Aoyama really was just a disposable pawn to him that just so happened to have a quirk in the hero course, and how this is going to potentially bite him in the butt, especially from what we see in this chapter where the heroes could just be setting a trap for All For One and that it's going to end up putting him at a major disadvantage. So yeah, it was just that small moment at the beginning of the chapter, and we'll get back to that soon, but we actually get to see the students returning back to their dormitories after a long day of being heroes, and we see that Kaminari is exhausted, as well as we get confirmation that even though they've been doing this for what we're assuming a while, it's still very tiring, and that even though they've been doing it harder, trying to locate the League of Villains, try to locate the villains, that they haven't really had a lot of time to themselves, which means that most likely they've spent their time working, eating, and sleeping, and haven't had a lot of time to communicate or talk to each other. And while we get this confirmation, we also get to see Ida's new costume in its full glory, and how we get to see that his helmet actually opens up, and many people have made the comparison of it being similar to how Iron Man's mask opens up, so it's most likely a reference, but overall it's a very cool design, and I think this may be his best design in the series. And as you have Ida, who apparently says this funny line about how if they want to be great heroes, they have to make sure that they are able to retain their strength as well as brushing their teeth, you have Mineta talking to Deku about how he wants to do some pervy talk, but Deku isn't about that. But Deku also begins to think about how he hasn't had enough time to really talk to Uraraka and actually thank her for what she did. And as Deku is thinking about this, All Might rushes in saying, "I am here!" on time as usual, as this is the moment where the classmates start to ask about Aoyama and how Tsukachi may have a comment about that, but we don't get it in this chapter. But All Might is telling them about the new plan, or how they're going to be a small number of individuals involving Class 1A when it comes to their final preparations for the war. And we don't get to hear the final preparations for it, but we do get sort of a montage of panels where we get to see how certain individuals are most likely preparing for this war. And the fact that we don't hear it means that there's more to the plan than meets the eye. We think that it's just the plan of separating the villains, but no, there's actually more to the plan. That's just the thing that has to occur. Because we still haven't gotten a concrete plan on what they want to do or what they're going to do, but we potentially get hints to it in this chapter. For starters, we get panels of the pro heroes talking to each other, most likely talking about the plan, as we have Endeavor looking at a piece of paper, most likely seeing the name of Dabi being involved in the plan and feeling very sorry about that. But probably the most interesting thing about these panels, besides we get to see the reactions of Deku, Shoto, as well as Bakugo, which most likely ties into what we're going to be seeing next involving the students of Class 1A, we get a few panels of Aizawa looking at Kurogiri, as we get to see a character standing right behind him, which could be theorized in our community to be Monoma, because he very much looks like Monoma from the back, the hairstyle, his clothing attire looks like UA, but it also looks like other people there who are potentially police officers or medical professionals. But if it is Monoma, that's actually very important, because we did get confirmation from Hirokoshi that Monoma will be playing a major role in the war, and having Monoma right next to Aizawa, which gives him easy access to his erasure quirk, as well as being close to Kurogiri and potentially using his quirk, Monoma could be a major factor that puts the villains at a disadvantage, because not only would he have access to erasure, but also warp gate, because Monoma would have the ability to erase the villains' quirks as well as separate the villains with ease. So yeah, that's an idea that's floating around the community. But what is also the second most interesting thing about these panels is that we also get to see that Aoyama is in jail. Yeah, Aoyama's in jail. Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, I never really thought that we would actually see Aoyama in jail. But yeah, he's in jail. Yeah, which proves that even though the students may have forgiven him or let bygones be bygones, yeah, he's still most likely going to be punished, and that this is a part of his punishment, most likely. And most likely he's not gonna stay in jail the entire time, but the fact that he even went to jail in the first place just shows that, yeah, what he did still has consequences, and that there are more consequences that need to come afterwards, whether positive or negative. So yeah, those are some pretty interesting panels that we get, but we actually cut over to the next day, where we actually are revealed that Nezu has told everyone in the UA facility that Shigaraki will make his assault in 4 days, and we get to see the Coconut Head's reaction to the reveal that Class 1A and everyone is leaving UA. We see all of them in front of the gate, thanking everyone for allowing them to stay there. We have Kota, who's like very concerned about Deku leaving UA, and he's like, yeah, I'm back on my feet, so we're gonna leave. You have Snipes telling everyone to be not afraid when the actual barrier comes up, as you have this Coconut Head looking guys like, wow, this kid's an idiot. Like, literally the best thing he could have done is stay here. He made our jobs easier. Now we're guaranteed a future in the new world. So this is the point that I was talking about when it came to this character and All For One. All For One wanted Deku to leave UA, but the idea of it is that the heroes already know that that is something that All For One want. And from what we see later on with a specific name of a building, pretty much all of this is sort of a trap for All For One, giving All For One a false sense of security that his plan is going the way that he wants, when in reality, this is all going according to the plan of the heroes. Because we don't know what it is, but most likely this is a part of the plan, making All For One feel as if he's won, and then pulling the rug from under him and causing him to fall. So yeah, I think that's what this is serving a purpose for, establishing more that All for One's plan is going to eventually fall apart completely. But as that is happening, we actually get just a small montage of all the students saying goodbye to their loved ones, at least the ones that we know. Shoto says goodbye to his family. Deku hugs his mom. We see Jiro as well as Uraraka saying goodbye to their parents. We get to see Bakugo and his interactions with his mom. Probably the most interesting interactions that we see is Weasel Girl, Fox Girl shaking hands with Shoji, which that implication and foreshadowing could mean that Shoji will be playing most likely a bigger role when it comes to heteromorphic quirk users, when it comes to their discrimination, which in my opinion pretty much confirms that he's going to fight Spinner. Like, there's no other person he could fight besides Spinner, and how he's most likely going to be like the hero's version of Spinner, and how he's going to be in a way a symbol for the heteromorphs to be on the hero side. As well as probably the second most interesting panel that we saw is just a group of individuals, a group of citizens that had some role in like standing up for Deku. We get to see the dude with the stars on his head, the dude that was against Deku coming to UA, but most importantly, we actually get to see Death Arms. And yeah, this is probably the saddest moment of this entire chapter, because Death Arms used to be this hero that wanted to fight for justice and heroism, and now he's just a normal civilian. But now he's just a normal civilian in the background and gave up his heroics because he didn't think that he would cut it. So the fact that we see him here is just very sad. So yeah, after that montage of panels, we see that the students have left and arrived at their new facility 30 kilometers away from UA, which is the prototype stronghold, Troy. And this ties into the idea that I have about how they're luring All for One in a false sense of security, because the fact that they are staying in a building called Troy, you know, from that one story involving, like, you know, I forgot what it's called. Oh yeah, the Greeks, the Trojan War, that Troy. Yeah, I'm fairly certain that this is either just a very simple callback to that, and it's just a reference, or it could be playing like a bigger role in potentially foreshadowing what's going to be happening and how this is all going to be a ruse or a Trojan horse, but not for the villains, but for the heroes. How this building of Troy may actually be a Trojan horse that lures All for One to their location, and then it turns out to be a trap. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. It's either a reference or potentially a part of the plan for the heroes, but most likely it's just a reference. And as we get that reference, we see the students are moving into the building. We see that some of them make funny comments, but what is probably the most important and what's going to take up the rest of this chapter for the most part is the interactions between Deku and Uraraka. Because Deku, as he's getting ready, he's putting his stuff in his room, he sees that Uraraka is standing outside looking across the destroyed city. And as Deku is approaching her and saying, like, are you unpacked? Is everything good? I just brought a change of clothes. He begins to thank Uraraka for everything that she did back then, and how this is making her very flustered, and how he's very thankful for everything that's going on, and he's asking her why she's outside, and she just says that she's watching the city, as we just have this moment of silence as she says just randomly, yeah, I'm kind of weird. I'm kind of an oddball, as we probably get like the moment that probably sticks out as being the most romantic part about this entire conversation is Deku just giving her compliments after compliments, saying that she's strong, she's compassionate, she's nice, her hairstyle super suits her. And as this is making her blush, we begin to get Uraraka's thoughts about what's going on, about how when she was shouting from the building that she thought of Toga's expression, and how it really made her uncomfortable because it just seemed as if her face was just filled and twisted in this way that it shouldn't be. And how she knows that everything that happened in the city was all because of the villains, and how she believes that she shouldn't be feeling this way, and that she goes out and looks at the city so that she has the ability to repress these emotions about Toga, and how she doesn't understand what Toga is feeling. And as she says this, and how this pretty much is like something that Uraraka would do within her character, Deku actually chimes in and says that he understands and that he gets it, and that he saw a crying boy inside of Shigaraki, and that even though this fight is inevitable, he cannot ignore that side of himself. And this is probably something that is very shocking for Uraraka, because that's just something that she has done, where she pushes down the feelings that she has and that she always tries to ignore them because of her goals of being a hero. But she also looks up to Deku, and the fact that Deku isn't ignoring it is most likely going to change her perspective of what she's been doing. So this could tie into a characteristic of Uraraka repressing her feelings, turning into someone who is going to express her feelings, most likely to Toga. And that this could be the building blocks of her finally expressing her love for Deku. Because even though this conversation isn't inherently romantic, there are romantic undertones to it. Because from a meta perspective, this is showing that, yeah, they're most likely going to end up together, and this is building blocks for that, even though it's not romantic in itself. But also, like I said, Deku compliments about her hairstyle, and that is something that is normally reserved for a sort of flirtating type of manner. That is a type of compliment that you may give to someone that you may have some type of romantic feeling or affection for. So yeah, that's pretty much what the rest of this chapter was. The final 2 pages of this chapter are actually sort of not related to that, but kind of are. Where you have Ida, Kirishima, and Bakugo in Shoto's room trying to comfort him during his time of need, because he's most likely still shaken up by the fact that everything has occurred in his life and that they really haven't had time to actually talk to each other. And how Ida tries to help Shoto by saying that he understands sort of what he's feeling, but Shoto responds with he can't, because he really doesn't know anything about his brother. He doesn't even know what he likes or what he dislikes, which is very interesting because that's pretty much what Natsuo said about Shoto himself. As you have Bakugo chiming in with a very wonderful line that he's like, as you have Bakugo chiming in about, yeah, I bet $1 million that he probably likes udon. As Shoto's like, yeah, that may be the case. And if it is, I would like to eat it with him sometime. And this is pretty much confirming that Shoto is going to fight Dabi Toya. But what is also very interesting about the line that Bakugo says is that it really shows that he does care for Shoto, and that this is something that he probably would be able to say because he has spent time with the Todoroki family. So yeah, pretty much what these past few pages are just confirmation of who these characters are going to fight. Deku is going to fight Shigaraki, Toga is going to fight with Uraraka, and Shoto is going to fight against Dabi, as we actually get the final page of this chapter, which is just the operation begins today, as All For One is talking into a communication device saying, let's get started, shall we? So yeah, that's pretty much the entire chapter, and all I can really say about this chapter is that it's just a very quiet, a very nice chapter. It's a okay chapter of My Hero Academia. We just get to see a lot of interactions between the students, primarily when it comes to Deku and Uraraka, forming sort of a pseudo-romantic undertone with it, but just showing that they really do care for each other, and showing that they aren't that much different when it comes down to what they want to do as heroes. And how Uraraka, most likely than not, shouldn't repress her feelings or ignore them, and should allow them to be expressed, which is very similar to how Toga came into herself, where she had to restrain these feelings for so long up until the moment that they blew up at the worst time, showing that there is a connection between Toga and Uraraka when it comes to what they do when it comes to their own personal thoughts and how they repress their own feelings. As well as most likely we get a little bit more setup for potentially what the plan will involve when it comes to the heroes' involvement with All For One, and how it could potentially be a sort of Trojan horse-like plan, tricking All For One and luring him into a false sense of security where they swoop in and defeat him in an instant. But we just don't know, and we probably won't know until the war actually commences, which from what we see in this chapter is most likely going to start next chapter, if not within the next 2 chapters. So yeah, this is pretty much just a setup chapter, and I think that is a really okay setup chapter. I really enjoyed it for the most part, really just enjoyed the interactions, and hopefully you were able to interact. And hopefully you were able to enjoy the interactions as well. So yeah, that's all I really have to say on the chapter. Hopefully you enjoyed this chapter. Hopefully you enjoyed this chapter review. What did you think of the chapter? Did you dislike it? Did you like it? What did you think? Do you think that the interactions between Deku and Uraraka are romantic? Do you think that it just has a romantic undertone to it? Or do you think that it's not romantic at all? You have your thoughts in the comments down below. Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye! There's so much.